What were we talking about?
Already.
Oh, right.
I was trying to do this clip to talk about this reporting from Jeff Stein at the Washington Post. Scoop. The White House budget will not include key Biden campaign pledges, such as the public option, prescription drugs reform, or student debt relief, per sources. The White House squarely focused on $4 trillion in jobs / infrastructure and, quote, families plan. Now, do you remember, Virgil, there was some stories going around a couple of weeks ago wherein a lot of progressives and others said that Joe Biden had exceeded expectations. Do you remember that?
I mean, I remember it from weirdos like that Anon guy, but I don't remember it from leftists.
No, there were leftists. A number of members of the squad reported that Joe Biden had exceeded expectations.
I remember AOC saying that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And in Anon's piece, I think some members of the Sunrise Movement, at least one member of the Sunrise Movement, was quoted as saying the same and lauding the size and scale of his, Green New Deal. It shouldn't be called that, but whatever, his commitment, the amount of money he's committed to the environment, which is unprecedented, but also woefully inadequate, as people who listen to our Kate Aronoff episode know. Now, at the time, those of us on the left who objected to this idea that he had met expectations were often greeted with, well, why did you set your expectations of Joe Biden so high? And I would like to point out that Joe Biden has not met his own standards. His own standards that he set in the course of the campaign. And I just want to remind you, Virgil, because it's been a little while since the primary season, and not everybody was as steeped in these clips as I was participating in the campaign. But I seem to remember a moment where Joe Biden's main argument against Medicare for all was that it would hurt Obamacare. And what we really needed to do was buoy and bolster Obamacare. Yeah. This was the argument that he made after the first presidential debate, which, by the way, is a video that is still up on his website.
All right, let's see it.
Part of the first Democratic debate in Miami. The question was asked whether we support eliminating private health insurance. Some said yes. I said absolutely not.
Did you see Kamala?
I remember that. That was so stupid.
It's so great. I mean, we gotta look at it again. Okay. Notice our vice president, Joe Biden's right-hand woman, with her right hand in the air saying she wants to eliminate private health insurance.
The question was asked whether we support eliminating private health insurance. Some said yes. I said absolutely not. I believe we have to protect and build on Obamacare. That's why I proposed adding a public option to Obamacare as the best way to lower costs and cover everyone. I understand the appeal of Medicare for all, but folks supporting it should be clear that it means getting rid of Obamacare. And I'm not for that. I was very proud the day I stood there with Barack Obama and he signed that legislation. Never before had anyone ever been able to do that in the White House. 20 million Americans gained coverage, over 100.
I'm going to skip ahead a little.
I know how hard it is to get that passed. I watched it. Starting over makes no sense to me at all. I knew the Republicans would do everything in their power to repeal Obamacare. They still are. But I'm surprised that so many Democrats are running on getting rid of it. The Affordable Care Act was a historic achievement for President Obama. And if I'm elected president, I'm going to do everything in my power to protect it and build on it.
And build on it. Everything in his power to protect it and build on it. Build back better.
So what does that mean? Build on Obamacare?
The public option. Which do I need to go back to the?
I mean, I zoned out a little bit listening to him ramble.
The White House budget will not include key Biden campaign pledges such as the public option, prescription drugs reform. Now, do I need to remind you who took more money from the pharmaceutical industry in the Democratic primary race than any other?
Yes.
It is Joe Biden.
Oh, damn it. I had Tim Ryan. All right.
Moreover, don't forget that his chief advisor, Steve Ricchetti, was formerly a pharmaceutical lobbyist. Okay. And so, surprise of all surprises, prescription drug reform and the public option are not priorities of the Joe Biden campaign, despite the fact that he blatantly that he ran on this and now has blatantly reneged. And the coverage of this is not going to take into account. I can already see the responses right now. He has time, give him time. This is the first volley. But as you and I have discussed on this show, Virgil, we do not have time. We have maybe a year and a half of a united Democratic government. And then the odds are, historically, we are going to lose one or both chambers of Congress, at which point Democrats can sit back into their comfortable zone of we can't do anything because of Republicans. And they won't have to go through this rigmarole of pretending that some lady parliamentarian woman who we've never heard of before in our lives. I don't know why I emphasized that she was a woman twice, but I can't remember her name, that we've never heard of before in our lives is somehow the most important person in the United States government.
Yeah, I mean, I would bet against it. I mean, that's a safer bet than crypto at this point.
What's going on with crypto right now? And actually, don't answer that question.
No, I'm not going to answer that question. Jesus Christ.
This was from September 20th. This is not an unknown. Prior to Joe Biden's election, during a summer of unprecedented protests, everybody knew what the game was and what Biden's incentives were. And instead of the people who claim to represent the interest of the most vulnerable people in America pointing this out, instead of news people calling out Joe Biden's ties to the pharmaceutical industry, calling out his staffing choices, calling out his long history of being oppositional to Medicare for all in the middle of a global pandemic in which 15 million people had lost their health insurance, we were being told vote blue no matter who, because if you raised any of these concerns, you were somehow rooting for Donald Trump. And that's how we get to the place we are today, where the same people who said, just vote for him, hold your nose, and we'll push him left, are happily ensconced in a brunch somewhere.
So let's run it down. Let's run down the bill. The public option that he promised, that was the centerpiece of all of his conversations about about healthcare. That was his rebuttal to Medicare for all. Like, that's off the table.
It's off the table for this package, they'll say. Their fair reading is...
for the last package that they're passing, like this fiscal year.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind they can only use reconciliation once every fiscal year.
Yeah, well, they gave us an extra reconciliation period, right? Which
I think got a bonus one. Did they? Yeah. What? Because we spent 300 gems to replenish our reconciliation energy credits.
I think the scam is that Joe Biden was getting so much heat around the filibuster because the obvious truth was you only get one more bite at the apple. That the media, there was a little bit of a release valve from a media perspective for him to say we get a couple more bites at the apple. And so he no longer has to own the fact that his own commitment to the filibuster is why we don't have voting rights reform, the PRO Act, and any number of things that he says are so important. And what did he call it? Oh, the filibuster is a Jim Crow relic, he says, but he's not going to get rid of it if it means that we can prevent getting into a Jim Crow style. We get the Jim Crow style voting restrictions because that's what's happening. And that's what the John Lewis Voting Rights Act is supposed to prevent.
Okay. So that's it for public option. What about, and this was a big one that I remember people were very exultant about, what about allowing Medicare, Medicaid, the federal government to negotiate prescription drug prices?
You're asking where Joe Biden is on it?
Well, that was one of the promises, right? And that's a big deal. That's a really huge deal.
We are not getting it. We're not getting it.
Okay, so that's what Jeff Stein means by prescription drug
prescription drugs reform.
I mean, I'm just reading the summary of the article. I haven't read the article.
Okay, the president's budget will focus on advancing the historic legislative agenda he's already put forward, said Rob Friedlander, spokesperson for the White House Budget Office. Quote, the budget won't propose other new initiatives, but will put together the full picture of how these proposals would advance economic growth and shared prosperity while also putting our country on sound fiscal course. Leaving out some of the president's campaign pledges could frustrate certain congressional Democrats. The 2020 Democratic presidential primaries featured extensive discussions of healthcare amid polling that showed it was a top issue for much of the party's base.
Yeah, there's something like, not even just the party's base, there's something like 60% of the country believes the government should guarantee health care for all citizens. Period. End of sentence.
Yep. The American Families Plan included a proposal to extend enhanced subsidies through the Affordable Care Act approved by Congress in the coronavirus relief package in March. The number of uninsured Americans would drop by about 4.2 million people if these subsidies are made permanent, according to estimates by the Urban Institute, a centrist think tank. But that measure falls short of the more expansive public option Biden touted as a centerpiece of his domestic policy platform during the presidential campaign. Biden's campaign touted that plan as ensuring that 97% of Americans would have health insurance. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki added in a statement, the budget document will reiterate the president's strong call to Congress during his joint address for prompt action to reduce prescription drug costs and expand and improve health coverage. I mean, apparently not. Some advocates remain optimistic Congress could still pass the measure even if the White House leaves it out of its official plans. Alex Lawson.
That will not happen.
Correct.
Will not happen. I don't know. Who's optimistic? Who are these morons?
Well, you're going to like this. Alex Lawson, executive director of the group Social Security Works, pointed to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's support for the measure. Okay. Lowering drug prices is the most popular part of the Build Back Better plan. Everyone hates high drug prices, and the White House has to get in front of it. Lawson said, I would also just note
some people like high drug prices, and they're actually rather powerful.